Welcome to another edition of the Golf World Campus Insider podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Harrington, senior writer at Golf World magazine, coming to you from our headquarters in Wilton, Connecticut, where I must admit, looking out the window, it would appear the golf season is coming to a quick halt. Rainy conditions and temperatures in the 50s suggest that there are only a few more rounds left here in the Northeast in 2010. That, though, makes for a perfect segue into this week's podcast topic. Indeed, the fall college season is coming to an end here as well in the next week, but we do have one more big event on the women's side before the teams take their winter breaks. That's this weekend's Pac-10 SEC Challenge being played at Stanford Golf Club in California. The tournament is a new one on the calendar, and an interesting one at that, as it pits all but one team from what I think many people, including myself, believe are the top two conferences right now in women's college golf. Now, Arizona State is the only school that will be missing this weekend, having originally committed to the event but needing to pull out after their roster issues started to emerge at the end of the summer. Even with the Sun Devils' absence, the field of 21 teams includes 14 ranked in the top 25 of the latest Golf World NGCA Coaches Poll, including top-ranked Alabama, number 2 LSU, number 3 USC, and number 4 UCLA. It's sure then to make for an interesting event to close the fall season. So joining me to chat about the tournament is Stanford's women's coach, Caroline O'Connor, who's one of the folks who spearheaded the event's creation and has taken real ownership of it. Caroline, thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about the event.
Tell me a little about it. How did it come about? My impression is that it's something that's been in the works for a little while now, but give the listeners some background into how it came about.
Yeah, well, really, it's at least it's at least 2 years into sort of the formal trying to get the event together. I remember, a couple of years ago walking the fairways recruiting during the summer and talking to some of the SEC coaches, because there's always been the running debate, which is the better conference, the Pac-10 or the SEC. And, each year we can go off year-end rankings or finishes at the national championship, but I never thought that those were necessarily representative because, sometimes they're flukes and some of the teams that should be at the championship aren't at the championship. So, I remember saying to, some of these coaches, wouldn't it be really fun if we could get all 22 teams together, go head-to-head, same conditions, same course, same everything, and, name the best of the best for the conferences, in a given year. So I was able to get I think everyone was very supportive of the event from the beginning. Certainly on the Pac-10 side, we came to a consensus, yes, this is something we want to do. Let's see if we can get the SEC on board as well. And so that probably happened about 16 months ago. I guess we presented the idea to the SEC formally at the U.S. Girls Championship when we were in New Jersey. And, we decided, yes, this is something we wanted to do, but then comes the real challenge in finding a date. Because as you can imagine, with these 22 teams, it's hard to find gaps in the schedule. And the last thing you want to do is step on the toes of someone who's already hosting a big event, certainly a conference event, because you don't want to have a negative impact on one of those tournaments. But we were, really fortunate that we sort of found this time during what I call the shoulder season. And since initially my idea was we'd host it at a neutral site, somewhere down south. We were going to have some better weather and go back and forth. But to try to get the thing just, up and running, I said, we'll host it here at Stanford. Weather should be decent, and we'll go from there.
Well, Stanford traditionally hosts an event in the fall, so it was the kind of thing where you could handle the actual administration of the tournament. I was curious, though, what's the most difficult thing about getting an event like this to come to fruition? It sounds like, to a certain extent, that it really is finding an open window on that schedule.
Yeah, I think that was the greatest challenge, was finding an open date. And once we found that open date, a lot of teams are pretty committed to the schedules that they have year in and year out. And even if it's not a conference event they typically attend, oftentimes they're just, they're regional events that are strong tournaments that they want to make sure they attend and give and support because they've done so for so many years. And with only 24 dates of competition, adding a new tournament is sometimes impossible. So that logistically finding the date was absolutely the greatest challenge, because everyone was fully committed to wanting to do it, because it sounds good. These are a lot of the top teams in the country. Let's see if we can just find some time to do it.
Well, year in and year out, the Pac-10 and the SEC are conferences that have many of the top teams in the country. And this year in particular, that seems to be the case with Alabama and LSU playing so well this fall, UCLA recently winning, and USC obviously right up there in the polls. Seems to be perfect timing for the inaugural playing of the event this weekend.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, it's pretty impressive. You look at between the two conferences, we have 5 of the top 5 teams in the country, 7 of the top 10. I mean, and I think we have 15 of the top 25 teams in the country.
In addition to a traditional tournament with a team and an individual champion, you all also are going to have a separate competition to identify the quote unquote best conference. Can you tell me about that?
With the format, we sort of debated back and forth, okay, so how is it that we're going to determine which conference is the better of the two? And, we sort of thought, well, in a daily round, we have 5 players, we count 4 scores, so why don't we each day, we'll take the 4 best scores from each conference, and then, we'll take the aggregate of the totals after the 3 days. Obviously, it would have been nice if we could have included Arizona State in this event. They had committed and we're going to be here. But I think that, at the end of the day, it's a golf tournament. And regardless of what the rankings say, regardless of where players, are rated, I just think that, you get out on this golf course, there are teams that aren't necessarily ranked that high right now in the fall that, typically play really well on this golf course. And so I think absolutely anything can happen. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's a tournament. It's a 54-hole medal play, and we're going to determine a champion. But I think adding that additional element of, let's see if we can name and this is not to offend anyone. I mean, when we say, the best conference in the country, and I certainly don't mean that at all. But, these two conferences are typically, again, 15 of the top 25, two of the better conferences in the country. But if we could say we're going to name just for fun the best conference in the country, let's have a tournament within a tournament.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to run interference for you on this one, and I'll take the heat and say that currently these two conferences are tops in the country. All due respect to the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, but through the fall, from top to bottom, these two conferences have the most quality teams. So I'll take the heat for you, Caroline. Don't worry about it. I'll go ahead and say it rather than you. So. And now, people on the outside, I don't think, have a true appreciation for what goes into a school actually hosting an event. Can you tell me some of the things you're doing this week, not only with preparing your own team to compete, but in terms of making sure the tournament goes off well?
Yeah, and we are fortunate. We typically host, I typically host 2 events at Stanford every year, and we like to host a postseason event every 3 years or so. So I'm really fortunate that we have a lot of great people surrounding us that really know how to put on a first-class event. One of the things I'm most excited about is we have 69 kids coming in for a clinic. It's mostly kids from the first tee of San Jose, but that also comprises kids from East Palo Alto and East Menlo Park, and kids that wouldn't typically have an opportunity to come, be exposed to the types of coaches and players that we're going to have on campus for the weekend. So to have these 69 kids here, and we're going to have just a ton of the college coaches and some players to expose these kids to something that, maybe in one of them it really inspires them to work harder and to really dream big and maybe one day have an opportunity to play for a school like one of ours is really exciting to me.
Is this tournament something you see continuing into future seasons then, or what kind of momentum does it have after this year?
Well, that's a great question. I think it has tremendous momentum, and so we've already begun the conversations as to who's going to host next year, because the plan is initially the idea was Pac-10 school hosts on the even years, SEC schools host on the odd year, and we go back and forth every year. But again, logistically, can we find gaps in the schedule? So there's a tremendous amount of interest and support and momentum moving forward. We already have 4 schools from the SEC who would like to host the event next year. But again, it's the challenges, and like I said, we're already going back and forth, really trying to find out if there's a date that will work for all 22 schools again. So absolutely the momentum, and I think everyone just loves the idea of having these conference challenges.
Can you assess where your team is right now? I don't think the finishes at the NCAA preview or the Mason Rudolph, where you all were outside of the top 10, were exactly what you all had in mind. But the T4 finish at the Dean Eilenfeld, that had to be, obviously much more positive. Talk a little bit about the Cardinal and how you all are doing as you enter the tournament.
Fortunately, and I think that the team has a really good grasp on this, it's a long, long year. And obviously we're disappointed in our first two tournaments, but at the same time, I think we learned a lot about ourselves and where we stand and what we need to do to move forward. We were preseason, we were ranked 13th in the country, and truthfully, I think that we all believe that we're even capable of more than that. But it's a long year, so we still, our lineup, we've had several different lineups. We've got some great kids, great freshmen who have not even had an opportunity to break into, well, they just haven't broken into the lineup yet, but I anticipate that they're going to be pushing there as well. So although we didn't finish where we'd like in the first two events, obviously the final round at the Dean was very encouraging, and I think that we've obviously had a lot of opportunities to play here over the last couple of weeks, and we've put some 66s on the board in qualifying and 69s and a bunch of post or subpar rounds. So I feel good about the team moving forward. Again, one of the things I've always said about the Stanford team is, we tend to play our best as we get into April and May, and so. It's like you look at the Giants. I mean, for us, everyone's ecstatic out here looking at how the Giants go out and win the World Series. When just a few short months ago, everyone had completely written the San Francisco Giants off, right? Yeah. I mean, everyone said they're a group of misfits. No real superstars. But you listen to the coaches, you listen to the players. They came out. They worked hard every day. They had this unspoken determination, and they had the perseverance to go out and work hard and fight and find a way to get it done. And so, I'd like to sort of say that's where our team is right now. And maybe no one looks at us right now as being a big threat, but that's okay. I mean, sometimes you need to have your back against the wall a little bit, and just to go out and really want to play well. But it's a long season, and I think fundamentally we're getting better every day, and that's all that we can do.
One other question, and I'll let you go. It's a general question for you as a coach. Now, people like myself often say or write that it's important for a team to play well in the final event of the fall so that there's something positive to take with the team into the winter break. It's the old, leaving a good taste in your mouth theory. What do you think of that? Is it really that important in terms of keeping the motivation going into the winter?
Well, I think I think it's important. I don't think that it's a be-all, end-all for sure. But I think that to keep, like you said, to keep the motivation high, to keep them working hard, to keep them excited as they go through, because, as the weather starts to turn and, the academics for everyone, sort of kick into high gear, sometimes it's easy to lose your focus. So you play well at home, which I think is, can be really nice. It certainly sets the tone for the coming months ahead going into January. But at the same time, it's not the be-all, end-all. And that's, I think, sometimes people do get focused on, some of these things that maybe aren't as important as they're made out to be. But obviously, being here at home, the inaugural Pac-10 SEC Challenge, we'd certainly love to, finish the fall season where we think how we think we should.
Well, that's some good perspective. I appreciate it. Caroline, best of luck to you this week at the Pac-10 SEC Challenge, and best of luck to Stanford overall. Thanks for taking a few minutes of time this week and joining me here.
Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate your support.
And as always, I'd like to thank my loyal listeners for coming back to another edition of the Golf World Campus Insider podcast. In the next couple weeks, we'll be putting onto the website our mid-season award winners, the mid-season All-American teams, players that surprised us, players that were the most improved, players that we think are going to have to step up a little bit more in the next season. So please return to the website, golfworld.com, the Campus Insider blog, or you can follow me on Twitter at GW Campus Insider, and follow the latest in college golf. So until next time, this is Ryan Harrington saying thanks for listening.